Hey guys, this is Cody back here once again for a review, and for tonight's review, I'm going to be talking about a movie that is definitely one film that you have to see to believe. If you guys remember a while back, I think it may be over a year ago or so, I did a video where I talked about the top 10 most disturbing movies that I've ever seen, and I actually placed this movie as my number one pick. Well, I actually just recently watched the film, and I don't know if I'd still put it as my number one pick, but I would definitely say it's definitely still in my top 5 most disturbing films, and it's definitely one film that that I think deserves to be up there. But it's also one film that I really don't think deserves to just be looked at as a disturbing movie. I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's a very surreal and very artistic film. And I think it's one movie that should be viewed as something more than just, a typical disturbing movie. And this is one film that I think people can get a lot of messages about it. It can be looked at as, it can be looked at as beautiful, ugly, pretty, grotesque, violent. There are just so many different emotions that go through in this film because, like I said, it's just a very different and very original movie in my opinion. But the movie I'm talking about was released in 2000 and was directed by Karim Hussain, and the film is Subconscious Cruelty. And I first heard about this movie when I was watching videos from one of my favorite YouTubers, Very Crudely Yours. He talked about this film as being his favorite film, and I, of course, got me interested because I enjoy the same films that he likes. So I figured I'd check the movie out, and I managed to get a copy of it. And I must say, it's one of those movies that I really did not know what to think of it when I first saw it. Like I said, different emotions. I really enjoyed it, but I was also very disturbed by it, and and just creeped out by it and everything. It was actually one of the first movies I ever watched that was like a truly disturbing movie. So I mean, me watching it now, it doesn't bother me all that much because I already know what's gonna be in it. But when I first saw that, it was really, I was younger, and it was right when I was just getting into extreme cinema, and it really did affect me in a lot of ways. But basically, the film is a series of intertwined stories about how people can abuse people, religion, objects, the earth, basically just to get pleasure out of it. And they're basically just 4 separate stories that are basically intertwined to make one full story. I'm going to go ahead and give a bit of a background about the film, give you the storyline, and I'll tell you guys what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. Basically, the film begins with a monologue, and you hear a woman talking, and it's set in this very dusty, distilled sequence of basically shots of a town. And the town is very run down, and you hear the woman talking about reality and of how no matter what you do, you cannot escape reality. And she talks about the dreams, your dreams that you have, and of how that it's dreams are it just has fear just going into being pushed into your face. And reality is one thing that you can never truly escape from. She does talk a bit about cinema, of how the cinema is one of the main escapes from getting away from it. But she also talks about how the cinema can sometimes contain the negativity that reality holds. And then, of course, the actual film begins. And the first actual scene in the film shows a woman laying naked on a slab, and she's being touched by another woman. And you can't see the other woman, but she's gently grazing her, and the woman on the slab begins breathing heavily as if she's enjoying it. And then as this is happening, the woman that's standing up puts a red cloth over her face so she can't see anything, and then gets a scalpel and ends up cutting the woman's stomach down here. And she ends up pulling out something that really does not belong in a woman's stomach. I'll say that. I'm not going to give away what it is, but it's a very tame start, I will say the least. It's a very tame start to the film because it's very surreal, and there's no explanation. So, any of the stories. They just kind of happen, and you're just there along for the ride, basically. Now, the second story, I think, is probably the one that's gonna offend, that's probably gonna affect and possibly offend most of the people that sees it. It's basically the story about a man that has a sexual infatuation with his pregnant sister. And he talks about how that he used to watch her. I mean, you don't see him actually talking. It's, like I said, just a narrative, and it's basically him talking about her laying in her bed, and her being pregnant, and he's actually watched her get pregnant. He's watched her have sex multiple times while he masturbates, and he continues to talk about how his sperm and her eggs are basically just the key to creation in some way, and he talks about of how it's such a beautiful yet kind of disgusting thing. And as he continued to talk about it, he talks about it how he knows that he has the power of creation just by just by ejaculating. Basically, he has the power to create a life, and he looks at it in both in a, like I said, it disturbs him in the worst possible way, but he also gets pleasure out of it. And then he comes up with the idea of wanting to destroy creation in some way. And he does it in probably one of the worst ways you can ever do it. Like I said, this is probably the most disturbing scene for me, and it's one thing that I know is going to bother a lot of people. I really, like I said, don't want to give away exactly what he does, but the way he talks about her giving birth to this baby, he talks about it like it's the greatest thing on earth. He used to despise his sister, and then he immediately loves her now that she's pregnant. And it's just one thing that really consumes him. And he also talks about having nightmares about horrible things that he could do to his sister. And like I said, I won't get into them, but it's definitely the one story that got to me. Now the next story, it's set in a big field, and you actually see a group of naked people basically walking around. They're all covered in dirt, and you actually see them rubbing up against the ground. And basically what they're doing is that they're actually sort of having sex with the earth in some way. And it does get kind of grotesque. You see a man pull apart part of the earth, and you see all this red sort of goo stuff. It looks like oil, but I think it's supposed to be blood in some way, as if the world is bleeding because it's being screwed, basically. It's people are doing something to the earth, and I actually think that actually makes a lot of sense, because in a way, the horrible things that we are doing to the earth are kind of like screwing it. Like in a way, we're all kind of destroying the world in some way. You can look at that in any way you can. I mean, I'm not saying we're all horrible, and it's all of our fault, but I'm saying the things that we do to the earth is going to affect it, and it will probably someday destroy it. And I think that third story is sort of saying, we're screwing the earth. I might be reading too much into it, but at the same time, I might not. I actually do think that that's what that bit of the story is about. But it does get a bit, graphic. At one point, a woman starts sucking on a root as if it's a penis, and then it starts squirting blood out of it, and it's pretty gross in some way. And then the fourth story focuses on religion. And it opens up with a man in a business suit, basically sitting at a coffee house drinking. And, he just sort of sitting there, looking around at people. And, he looks like the most normal person in the movie, because everyone else that's in the film looks as if there's something up with them, or, just something. But, he seems like the most normal person in the film. And you see him get up and actually go in to his home, where he ends up watching porn and masturbates to it. And after he's finished masturbating, it focuses on a cross that he has around his neck on a necklace. And then it cuts to him having a nightmare of, I'm going to go a bit further into this story. It cuts to him having a nightmare of being castrated by somebody, and he's basically surrounded by people, and he's basically being castrated, and it is very, very gory, very bloody. You do see it happening, and as he's being castrated, you don't see who's doing it, but as he's being castrated, he's also being jerked off by, an unknown force, and a man is speaking to him, and and he's basically talking about how that he sinned, and it's bad, and he's sinning, and he's basically being punished by it. And then the last scene in the movie actually includes Mitch Davis, who is the producer of the film. You actually see him, and he basically has a thorn crown over his head and long black hair, and he's basically supposed to look like Jesus. And he's being carried by these 3 women that are supposedly, I'm not really sure exactly what the women are supposed to represent, but they basically, are carrying him, and they throw him on the ground, and they begin tearing him to pieces, piece by piece. And it's also a very gory scene, very graphic. All 3 women are naked, and they're all getting pleasure off of it. And it is a very, it's hard to watch a lot at some points. Like I said, this film is hard to watch, but you see it happening. You know that what's happening should not, be done. There's also a shot of, I believe it's still Mitch Davis, covered in blood on a street corner, just like bowing up and down to a church outside and screaming in pain while blood rushes from his head from the thorn crown around it. And you can tell that they shot it just on the street, but you see cars going by. So, and so when I saw that, I kind of laughed. I was like, wow, it's just in the middle, it's just next to a street. They just went out and probably shot that scene. But, yeah, that's pretty much the entire story. Now, my thoughts on it are, I can get a lot of different things about this film. I consider it a very artistic film. I consider it very gory, bloody. It's an exploitation film. But if I had to call it anything, I call it an art exploitation. If that is a genre of film, I really think this movie falls into it, because it's very artistic and surreal. It's got a lot of beautiful scenes. Of course, every single story has its own theme, and it's one of those movies that you can get a lot of meanings out of every single story in it. And it's one movie that I'm pretty sure it should be debated upon. I think people should talk more about it and get more into this film. Because I can tell that it's one of those films that you're going to look at it in a different way, and I'm sure that your opinion on the film is going to change. Is going to be completely different from from another person that watches it. So if the movie sounds good to you, I definitely recommend checking it out. I know that the DVD is out of print, I believe, and it might be expensive, but if you can find it online, I recommend watching it. But I warn you, the graphic scenes are very, very graphic, and they are definitely not for the weak or not for, the timid. They are very, very graphic. So, for those of you who are not into really graphic, exploitation films, I would definitely stay clear of this. If you're into just watching, slasher films or something like that, this is definitely not the movie for you. But if you are into films like that and you have not seen it, and you want to see a really cool, surreal, artistic film, go at it with an open mind, and I think you'll get a lot of you'll have a time watching it, I must say. Whether or not it'll be a good time or a bad time, well, that's really up to you and how you perceive the film. And like I said, it's one movie that's going to stick with you, and even me, it's one movie that I know I will not soon forget. But anyway, guys, that is my review for Karim Hussain's Subconscious Cruelty. If you've seen the film, definitely let me know what you guys think about it by leaving a comment or video response down below. I'll be doing a lot more disturbing movie reviews coming up. I'll also leave a link down below to my I think it's 2 videos of me talking about my top most disturbing movies. So go check that video out if you want to see other, my choices, and if you want to see other films I plan to review. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, everyone, and I'll see everyone later.